The garden behind the Blackthorn stronghold was silent, except for the wind moving through the pines. It was the kind of silence that belonged only to places ruled by power, where even the birds seemed to know better than to sing too loudly. Elena Voss did not belong there, and she knew it. She had crossed into Blackthorn territory only because she had no other choice. Her friend Mira was dying of a fever that no healer in her own pack could cure, and the one herb that could save her, silverroot, grew only in the shadowed hills beyond the Blackthorn border. Elena had walked for 2 days without rest, without proper food, driven by a promise she refused to break. By the time she reached the edge of the royal gardens, her legs could no longer hold her. She told herself she would rest for a moment, just a moment. She did not see the wolf until she was already leaning against him. He was enormous, white as frost, with eyes the color of a winter sky. Any sensible person would have run, but Elena was too exhausted to feel fear, and something about the wolf's stillness felt less like danger and more like recognition. He did not growl. He did not move away. Instead, he lowered himself slowly to the ground beside her, as though he had been waiting for her his whole life. Elena did not know that this wolf was Ragnar, the true form of Chaol Ashgrove, the Alpha King of Blackthorn. She did not know that Ragnar had not allowed anyone this close in 5 years. She only knew that his fur was warm, and that for the first time in a long time, she felt safe enough to close her eyes. She fell asleep against him beneath the pines, and Ragnar did not move for the rest of the night. He curled his massive body around her, protecting her from the cold, and something old and buried inside him began to stir awake. Chaol returned to the gardens just before sunrise. He had spent the night settling a dispute between 2 senior wolves, and his mind was heavy with pack matters. He expected to find Ragnar waiting for him near the training grounds, as always. Instead, he found his wolf curled protectively around a stranger, a woman he had never seen before, sleeping peacefully against his side. For a moment, Chaol simply stared. Ragnar had not let anyone touch him like this since the night Chaol made the greatest mistake of his life. Not guards, not healers, not even Chaol's own mother. And yet here was an unknown woman, sleeping soundly, wrapped in the same protective warmth that Ragnar had denied everyone else for 5 long years. Something about it unsettled Chaol deeply, though he could not yet say why. He ordered 2 guards to wake her and bring her inside. He told himself it was a matter of security, nothing more. A stranger sleeping this close to the Alpha's private wolf was not something he could ignore, whatever the reason. Elena woke to firm hands lifting her to her feet, and the sharp light of morning in her eyes. Panic surged through her, quick and cold, until she saw the wolf rise beside her, refusing to let the guards separate them completely. He walked at her side all the way to the stronghold, tail low, eyes alert, as though he could not bear to let her out of his sight. She was brought before the Alpha King in the great hall, her wrists lightly bound, though no one had been rough with her. She lifted her chin and met his eyes, refusing to let her exhaustion show as fear. That was when it happened. Chaol stepped forward to grip her wrist, intending only to question her, to demand her name and her purpose. But the moment his hand closed around her skin, something inside his chest cracked open like a door long sealed shut. Warmth spread through him, fierce and undeniable, a feeling he had spent 5 years trying to forget. The mate bond. He knew that feeling. He had felt it once before, years ago, right before he tore it apart with his own hands. He looked at her more closely now, past the travel-worn clothes and the dust on her face, past the false name she had given the border guards, and beneath it all, he saw her, truly saw her. Elena. The woman he had rejected 5 years ago, the night before the War Council decided his fate, the night he told himself it was the only way to protect her from what was coming. Elena felt it too. The bond flared to life inside her chest, sharp and painful, dragging old wounds back to the surface. She pulled her wrist free, shaking, staring at the man she had once loved, with everything she had, the man who had looked her in the eyes and told her she meant nothing to him. "You?" she whispered, and the word carried 5 years of grief inside it. Chaol's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, but no words came. What could he possibly say to the woman he had shattered? The guards, sensing the sudden shift in the air, stepped back uncertainly. Ragnar pressed himself against Elena's side, whining low in his throat, torn between the man he was bound to and the woman his heart had never let go of. "Leave us," Cale finally said, his voice rough. The hall emptied slowly, until only the three of them remained: man, wolf, and the woman who had once believed she would spend her life among them. "Why are you here?" Cale asked, though the question came out harsher than he intended. Elena's eyes burned, but she refused to let the tears fall in front of him. "Not for you," she said. "I would never come back here for you." She told him the truth, because there was no reason left to hide it. Her friend was dying. Silverroot was the only cure. She had crossed the border out of desperation, not memory, not hope. She had built a life far from Blackthorn, far from him, and she had no intention of ever returning to the place that had broken her. "I spent years putting myself back together," she said quietly. "I am not the same woman you rejected." Cale studied her, and for the first time in 5 years, he allowed himself to truly look at what his choice had cost. Elena stood taller now, steadier. There was a quiet strength in the way she held herself, a strength that had not existed before, forged entirely without him. She did not need him. She had survived and thrived on her own. It should have brought him relief. Instead, it brought him a grief he had never let himself feel. "I rejected you to protect you," he said finally. "The War Council believed our enemies would target my mate to weaken me. I thought if I severed the bond, you would be safe from what was coming." "You decided that for me," Elena said, her voice trembling with old anger. "You didn't ask, you didn't warn me. You just stood in front of everyone and said the words that broke something in me I still haven't fully fixed." Cale had no defense for that, because she was right. He had made the choice alone, believing it was strength, when in truth, it had only been fear wearing the mask of duty. "I am sorry," he said, and the words felt insufficient even as he spoke them. "I have been sorry every day since." Elena did not answer. She simply asked for the Silverroot, took what she needed, and turned to leave. But Ragnar would not let her go. He walked beside her all the way to the border, refusing every command Cale gave him to return. For the first time since the rejection, wolf and man were divided, torn between duty and the pull of a bond that refused to die quietly. Elena stayed only long enough to gather the herb, intending to disappear from Blackthorn territory the same way she had entered it. But fate, it seemed, was not finished with her yet. That night, as she prepared to leave, the sound of horns echoed across the hills. A rival pack, the Draven Wolves, had been watching Blackthorn for months, waiting for a sign of weakness in its king. They believed the unresolved mate bond had left Cale vulnerable, his focus divided, his wolf unsettled. It was the opportunity they had been waiting for, and they struck without warning. Elena could have run. No one would have blamed her for leaving a pack that had once discarded her to fight its own battles. But as she watched the chaos unfold, as she saw wounded wolves being carried in from the front lines, her healer's instincts overpowered every reason she had to walk away. She stayed. Not for Cale. Not for the crown he wore, or the title he carried. She stayed for the young wolves crying out in pain, for the mothers searching desperately for their children amid the smoke and fear. She worked through the night, tending wounds with steady hands, refusing to rest even as exhaustion clawed at her. Cale fought at the front lines, his wolf form merging seamlessly with his human strength, driven by a fury he had not felt in years. But it was not until he saw Elena, kneeling beside a fallen wolf in the middle of the battlefield, refusing to abandon her patient, despite the danger closing in around her, that something inside him finally broke free. He moved without thinking, placing himself between her and an attacking wolf, taking a blow meant for her without hesitation. Ragnar fought with a ferocity born not of duty, but of love, refusing to let harm reach the woman who had slept peacefully against him beneath the pines, who had trusted him before she even knew his name. The battle raged for hours, but Blackthorn's wolves, fueled by the sight of their king fighting not just for the pack, but for the mate he had once cast aside, fought harder than they ever had before. By dawn, the Draven Wolves retreated, their plan to exploit a broken king shattered by the truth they had failed to see. Cale was not weakened by his mate bond. He was strengthened by finally choosing to honor it. In the quiet aftermath, as the wounded were carried to safety and the pack began to breathe again, Chaol found Elena sitting alone near the edge of the battlefield, her hands still stained from hours of healing work, her body trembling with exhaustion. He knelt beside her, saying nothing at first, simply staying close, the way Ragnar once had beneath the pines. "You didn't have to stay," he said softly. "I know," Elena answered. "I stayed because it was right, not because of you." Chaol nodded, accepting the truth without argument. He had no right to expect anything more from her, not after everything he had taken from her 5 years ago. "I want to make this right," he said, "not with words, with time. I am not asking you to forgive me tonight, or tomorrow, or even next season. I am only asking for the chance to become someone worth forgiving." Elena studied him for a long moment, searching his face for the coldness that had once driven her away. She did not find it. Instead, she saw a man who had finally allowed himself to feel the weight of his mistake, who had fought not out of duty, but out of love he could no longer deny. She did not fall into his arms. She did not promise him a future she was not ready to give, but she did not walk away either. "Mira is safe now," she said quietly. "I should return to her." "Then return to her," Chaol said. "But know that Blackthorn's gates will remain open to you, for as long as you wish to walk through them." Days later, before the gathered pack, Chaol performed the ancient reversal ritual, formally undoing the rejection he had spoken 5 years before. It was a rare and painful bond to reverse, one that left him physically weakened for hours afterward, but he did not hesitate. He wanted every wolf in Blackthorn, and Elena herself, to know that his choice was no longer built on fear. Elena did not attend the ceremony. She had already returned to her friend, to the life she had built far from Blackthorn's walls, but word of what Chaol had done reached her regardless, carried by traveling wolves who spoke of their king's quiet, unwavering devotion. She did not return to Blackthorn immediately. Healing, she had learned, could not be rushed, not for Mira, and not for herself. But every few weeks, a message would arrive from the north, simple and unhurried, never demanding anything in return, just words, steady and patient, proving day by day that Chaol intended to keep his promise. Months passed before Elena finally returned to Blackthorn, not as a stranger fleeing across its border, but as a woman choosing, for the first time, to walk toward it on her own terms. Ragnar met her at the edge of the pines, exactly where they had first found each other. He did not rush toward her, he simply waited, patient and steady, until she closed the distance herself. That night, as she sat beneath the same trees where it had all begun, Ragnar rested his great head gently in her lap, and for the first time in 5 years, both the wolf and the man he shared his soul with finally felt whole again, not because the past had been erased, but because they had both finally earned the right to a future.